There was one of the questions which were based on, the EV world and investment in the EV world and how it works, how it functions, and what the future would be. So, staying on the banking and finance domain, our next topic is a widely demanded subject always in any of the sessions that we have done in the past. So, EduBridge has been in existence since more than 13 years now. However, this topic is the first question any learner is interested to know the answer to even today. So if you're interested in building a career in banking and finance domain, this is the session for you. The topic being covered is top career options for finance graduates, and who better to shed light on this but a chief financial officer from a leading corporate brand that is creating waves in the electric vehicles domain. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Deepak Jain, a finance leader with exposure to large multi-location and transnational revenues. Mr. Jain joined Ather Energy as the Chief Financial Officer in November 2019. He brings over 22 years of experience across global brands like First Advantage, Apple India, P&G, and Gillette. He joined Ather after a 5-year stint at First Advantage as Chief Financial Officer for their India business. We are so happy to host you today, Mr. Jain. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me around. Good evening, everyone. I don't know if my camera is on or not, but for some reason I can't see things, but hopefully y'all can.
Yes, you're visible. We can see you.
Fair enough. I have a confession. I'm not going to talk a lot about finance and career in finance. I think there'll be a lot of people who've spoken about it, and I believe, I'm just humbled to be here. I'll just give you a little bit of snippets of what I believed helped me in my career progress over the years, and may not be a true finance gyan, if I can call it so, but it's more of things I kept in mind as I progressed in my life. Towards the end, I will probably touch a little bit upon finance careers because I got to be true to the agenda that was provided. A little bit of what I believe is, how careers have shaped up in the different colleagues and companies that I've been in, right? So I've spent some time. So I'll talk a little bit about that as well. Hope that works as a construct.
Definitely. The stage is all yours.
Thank you. I'll just present. I just hope y'all can see the screen. I'm presenting something. I just hope y'all can see the screen. If that's okay, then I'll move forward.
Yeah, it's just loading, I think.
Okay. Let me know once the screen's visible, then I can just quickly run through it.
Unmute.
Yes, Mr. Jain, it's visible.
Okay, fantastic.
You're done.
Okay, so I'll just quickly start off by saying I'll share 7 stories. It seems a lot, but I'll try and be very fast about it. But why 7 stories? The way I look at it is there are 7 days in a week. There are 7 wonders of the world. There are 7 colors in a rainbow. There are 7 continents on the planet. There are 7 pharaohs, as we, at least in the Hindu ritual, as we take our vows. There are 7 chakras in the human body, and there are 7 dwarfs in the Snow White story as well. Right, so that's why I like the number 7 for some reason, and therefore just 7 quick tips and I'll try and just share some stories of how things worked for me. So this is way back in 1997. I think I can talk about that. I have some gray hair. I used to have a Yamaha motorcycle. Used to enjoy my ride, feel the gush of air going through my hair, and as most two-wheelers or a lot of early days riders, I met with an accident. It was such that I was in bed for almost 8 months because of the accident. But what I realized while I was in bed, while I was going through surgeries and all of this fun stuff, it was just seeing people around that, were probably more hassle than you were. And I started reading a lot. I read one of these books by P.G. Wodehouse, Carry On Jeeves. It was just a very, very fun book. In fact, brought out a sense of humor in my conversation with people that I had. And then actually, I went on to read more books. I kind of finished my chartered accountancy as a part of being in bed and doing nothing. Went to the examination hall in crutches and stuff like that. So, but the good news was the fact that because I was in bed, I started looking at things a little differently. Instead of doing nothing, I just thought might as well study and get my CA final exams done with. And fortunately, I was lucky enough to be able to pass my exams, and that was what I would just call just trying to be positive, even in tough situations. Try and be sure that you're a little bit more considerate about how people around you are, and more importantly, if you're positive, you're having the right attitude. I think the people around will change, or will at least feel the vibe, and will make that change for themselves, right? The second thing that worked a lot for me was don't be in your comfort zone, right? That's something I always believe in. Again, another short story. I belong from Calcutta. This is where I was brought up. So I did my entire schooling, my CA, even my accident was in Calcutta. And in Calcutta, it's phenomenal life, right? My parents were with me. I was staying in the house. Food was taken care of whenever I want, 4 meals a day. I would, my clothes were ironed. My laundry was always done. Everything was, taken care. My parents were like typical Indian parents, right? Extremely committed to how they take care of their kids, right? Food was always on the table, and I'm a big foodie. So that was all good fun. And one day I was just sitting down, and this is just a picture of people who are from Calcutta will realize this, which is called the typical adda in Calcutta. Friends sitting down and chatting around, and one of the friends just said, "Enjoying your life in," and I'm using a Hindi phrase, "Bapuji ka hotel," right? You're just enjoying your life in your father's hotel. Everything is being taken care of. You've not probably challenged life, and that kind of left a flavor with me that said, I think for me to be able to really do something that makes me a little more confident is to step out. That's where I finished my CA, and still in crutches, went to Delhi to give interview for my first job. And Delhi was the only location I chose because, as we have in India, right, a lot of us have relatives in different parts of the country, and maybe outside India as well. But Delhi was a location I had nobody, right? And I said, okay, if I want to go and get myself out of the comfort zone, let me go to a place I don't know anybody. It was and coming from Calcutta to Delhi, and people who know the cultures of both locations will know, it was a bit of a shock. But good fun. I got my job in EY. That's where I started my career. It was in an internal audit function. I did that for about a year and a half. Thoroughly enjoyed, was able to see different parts of the country, different kinds of companies. And if you're an internal audit, what you do is literally take a problem statement from the client and go dive deeper into trying to solve for and find solutions with it, right? I think for about a year and a half, I went into industries like paper pulp. I went into health industry. I went into finance leasing operations, into white goods industry, and Whirlpool, and Singer, and some of those, right? So it was good fun. Got a great exposure into how different categories work, how different business cycles work. It was good fun, but the important thing was I was completely thrown into this new world where I had to take care of my laundry, had to feed myself, had to ensure that the house that I was staying in was cleaned up every time, and everything around that what goes, right? So I felt I learned a lot, not just at work at ENY, but even the skills to survive, the skills to take care of yourselves, and to be far more structured in your day, right? Plan it well so that you can do much more out of the day. And this is what I so much believe in, right? If you're in your comfort zone, you're in a different circle, right? This is where magic happens. So, you just got to step out, and all of us should kind of, do that more often than not. The third one was be a little bit before time. That's something I've always liked. This is again, while I was in Delhi, winters in Delhi can be brutal, literally brutal, right? I mean, I had to take about 3 change of buses before I could reach my office in the morning, and sometimes during the month end, and I had moved from E&Y to Gillette. And Gillette, I was taking care of financial reporting and financial planning. And every month end was a task where we literally had to spend some long hours. And that was because it was early days. The systems were just progressing. Not necessarily, today's world, month end closing is as onerous as it used to be earlier. Maybe in some places they are, but it improved in Gillette. So that's why I know it was not always so. It's not always that bad. But in those days, early days, we were like waking up at 5 in the morning, taking a ride, 3 bus changes, getting to work. It's one of those things that you do. And your grandfather told you he walked 25 kilometers to reach school. It's one of those kind of stories. But yeah, that's what we did. Used to go be at work early in the morning. And some of these things stayed with me, right? That if you're early in the morning, before the buzz of the office hits, you can plan your day significantly. You're far ahead of the game, right? You're in the morning, you're early, you literally have an opportunity to check your mails, do a few things, have your cup of tea without being disturbed if required, right? And before the buzz of the office starts, you're there, right? I think that has always gone a long way in at least how structure a day is, at least, right? Quite often, you want to start a day, you thought about it yesterday that, hey, tomorrow I'll come and do 1, 2, 3. More often than not, you land at 10 in the morning and there are 10 things piled up for you. And you really don't get to start what you wanted to do. But if you're there a few hours or a few minutes or a few half an hours early, right? I think you can plan your day much better. You can at least start off on a few things that you think you would want to do for that day. In fact, even in some calls nowadays, there are life after COVID. Most of us spend time looking into these kind of Zoom links. I've tried to be probably 2 minutes early in most cases than not. And those 2 minutes just help me on two things. One, to be sure, I'm not at the last minute looking for the link and looking for passcodes, etc., or network not working, and I'm embarrassed to be late. But more importantly, if there's somebody else on the call, you get to say hello, which is not related to work, right? Quite often, and especially during COVID, most of us, right, were so back to back into calls, we hardly took time to even say hello to a colleague, right? So I think 2 minutes before a call, an hour before the day starts, some of these things have really helped me. This is something I think stays with me and stayed with me a long time, and I think still helps me a lot. So as I said, I had joined Gillette and I was doing financial planning. I joined Gillette in about 2000, somewhere around in 2005, 6. Procter & Gamble acquired Gillette, and I was in Gillette at that time. This was one of the mega deals of that time, where two large FMCG conglomerates kind of came together. P&G was known for more being a brand for the households. Gillette was the men's shaving. I think it was a great synergy. The companies came together. And when you have such acquisitions, the first thing you go through is what's going to happen to my job. Because as you think about a new company, not necessarily you have a chance to probably know whether you're going to have a job or they're going to sack you, stuff. So I was, like every normal human being, was going through my pangs of anxiety, not sure what's going to happen. But as I said, there was somebody looking out for me in terms of that helped me get a job in P&G itself. It just worked out. I had an opportunity of having a chat with the P&G team where I had done enough and more of financial planning and analysis. And I said, if you give me an opportunity in Procter, I'd like to do, I gave them a couple of options of job. One was sales finance, because I'd not done sales finance earlier, which was more taking care of the dealerships, the distribution setup. And P&G had a phenomenal distribution setup, right? And there was a lot to learn there. Or I had given them some options around treasury. I think I was lucky enough, as I said, I got an option to take into sales finance. So I accepted the offer and got into P&G. One thing I realized the moment we landed into P&G that this is a company that trains a lot, right? And they were like, because we were outsiders coming into the company, they wanted to be sure we understood the company. We had a relevant training on the do's and don'ts in terms of the processes, the policies, etc. And then, what does it take to be successful in PNG? And there were many aspects to this. I think they did a brilliant job to an extent where I had to tell them that, guys, enough of training, let me get some job done. But no, I think they did a good job. But in one of the trainings that stayed with me, and that was on work-life effectiveness, there's this gentleman called James Lafley, right? And he had a full program, and it was a video as well. In fact, I think even on YouTube, you'll find that video, where he was talking about how do you manage work-life effectiveness, right? And one of the things he said that, as a human being, you have to play many roles, right? You would play a role of a dad, a husband, a son, a brother, and so on and so forth. And if you're a lady, then you play many more than a man does, 24/7. But the fact remains is, what he said is, you can't do more than 5 jobs properly, and that for that you've got to be super efficient. And being a employee is a job. Being a father is a job. Being a husband is a job, right? But you got to be sure that you're completely committed to it. And through that, and there was a long story, and as I said, it's available on YouTube. What one realizes that you have to have work-life effectiveness, right? You can't be just sitting at work all night and figuring things out, right? And the effectiveness is important, right? You can't just say that, okay, I'll only build a career and I'll not take care of the family. And therefore, you got to say, hey, there are some things, and this is something I heard it from him. He's like, there's some things I will never miss. I'll never miss a birthday of my kids. I'll never miss an anniversary of my of our marriage, right? Or some of those things. He put that, right? That come what may, there's some things I will not do, right? And it just talks about how you commit yourselves to your family and be sure that you take care of your work as well, right? And towards the end, what I realized, and this came as a part of that learning, to say, you have one day, you have 124 hours, and therefore you have one calendar, right? So if you have personal work or professional side of what you're doing on the job, maintain one calendar. So if you have a birthday party of your son to go to, you better well have that on your calendar, because if you miss it, in all probability, somebody's going to come and block your time, and you'll have a Zoom meeting, and you'll not be prepared to be with your son at the time that you were supposed to be, right? So I think that was a very important learning for me. I, even till date, if suppose I have, and I drive a lot in Bangalore, I don't like it much, but even my drive time from work to office to home, or home to office, is on the calendar, because that's an hour of the day that's on the road. So everybody knows in that time horizon, if I can only take calls. I will not be able to take video calls, right? So it's some of those things, how you plan yourself. It's important to know that there is one calendar, and you kind of stay true to it. The fifth one that works always for me is, come what may, keep calm, right? Always put yourself in somebody else's shoes, right? We go through our bouts of anxiety. We go through our bouts of stress in the job that we do on a day-to-day basis. And what we need to realize, and I realized it through one of the conversations, and I'll talk about that, is that everybody who gets up in the morning to go to work is there to do his best. Nobody gets up in the morning saying, hey, I'll take a shortcut today. I'll probably skip something today. I'll probably not give in my best. Nobody does that, right? Everybody's there. And if somebody's there and he's behaving in a certain manner because of stress, I think we should, and some people, and my mom sometimes says, count till 10, right? Just count till 10. Just give yourself a breathe. Don't react at that time. And this is what came to me. There was this incident where I was working, and there's this colleague of mine walks into my room, and I was fortunate enough because by that time, from Procter, I'd moved to Apple. It was a great opportunity. After learning a lot from Gillette and Procter, I get an opportunity to be the CFO of Apple India. And when I got into the CFO job, I got a small cubicle. So I was lucky enough to be able to, shut the door and listen to some good music. but more importantly, get some work done. But one of the guys just walked in and he was fuming, right? Because I think he was leaving the company and some payroll error, and his full and final was not getting done. And he was fuming and he shouted at me and stuff like that. You and finance are not doing this, and you're not processing my payroll and stuff like that. And I heard him out, and I said, I sincerely apologize. I'll just look into it. Give me 24 hours and I'll get back. And while all this was happening, there was one of my colleagues, who works with me in finance, who was the accountant there, was standing right there. And he's like, how did you let him talk to you like that? It was so rude of him and stuff. Like, just realize he's lost a job or he's taking up a new job. I didn't know what the reality was. And he has his own stress because there's a lot of change he's got to manage. And he probably's been calling somebody up here to get his payroll sorted out, but it was not getting so. Give him some leeway, right, and let him be. And he, to that extent, that colleague of mine who was standing there told me that, you're staying calm. And I'm like, yeah, what do I have as a choice, right? And that's what's important, right? We got to realize that we got to respect that people out there are not there to, be wrong to you or do wrong to you. Right? I think everybody does it right. They all are right intented, right? They have different objectives, and I'm oversimplifying. There are sometimes things get convoluted and they're conflicting objectives, but broadly and by and large, I think people are there to do the right thing. It's just we need to be sure that we take that in that spirit, right? Eventually, after a few months of things settling down, he sends me a LinkedIn invite, wanting to join me as in his network, and we chatted. And once in a while, we get a chance, we say hello to each other. This is also an important part, right? Be a part of the team. Quite often, in the kind of works that we do, and especially towards month ends and stuff, you're already so stressed. You wanting to just finish your work, and it's already 12 or 1 in the night. You want to wrap up and you want to go home. And by the way, don't get this impression that all finance careers people work till 12 in the night, right? I was probably the inefficient one who was doing that. But it's late. You want to go back home. You're trying to figure out how to finish your part of the job and move on. But what I realize is more often than not, when you're closing your books, right, you may have a certain part of the ledger or trial balance or reporting that you're doing, right? And there are other colleagues of yours also. And not necessarily everything is sequence, not necessarily everything is parallel. It could be both, right? And you may finish your job and go, but not necessarily that it completed the entire job. And what is the effort a team needs is to ensure that the entire job gets done, right? So individually, you may have done a brilliant job, but collectively as a team, if you all missed your deadline, then however brilliant you were, right, nobody will ever recognize because you were a part of the team that did not deliver. And therefore, I believe it is most important that you understand the team objective, and in some cases an organizational objective, and be sure you're there till the last, right? You should be the last man leaving. If you can have that as a spirit, to say, I will be the last man leaving to ensure that the job is done, that's going to be going to go a long, long way in how not just people perceive you, it's just your ability to be there that says, hey, I was there as a part of the team. And more importantly, for me, what I realized is, and I've done this in my life quite a few times, that when you're sitting down there and you're hearing the issues or hearing the problems or hearing the solutioning that the people are doing, you learn a part of that, learn as a part of that, right? And I think that also helped me quite a bit, right? So not necessarily I'm just looking at what I did. I'm also there to learn from what other people are doing. And, it's just a part of how you absorb things, right? And that's very important. To me, it was also part of, being a constant learner, right? Whenever you get an opportunity, and if you're sitting in a team, even if you finished your job and they're working on something different, hey, they are doing something that you may probably be doing tomorrow, or you may be accosted with the same problem tomorrow, and you may have heard of the solution which may be. So there are some benefits of being with the team and being successful with the team together. That helped. The seventh one was run your own race, right? And this is something that I've always believed in. This is again a short story of one of my managers, right? Or when I was actually moving across, right, between Gillette and Procter. And one of my managers came and told me that, hey, there is such and such levels in P&G. Like in Gillette, you had grades 1 to, I think some 20 or something. In Procter, there were different designations. So this is getting mapped like this. This is where you are. And I'm like already stressing, do I have a job? If I have a job, will I be a manager? Will I not be a manager? And I realized that, I am just thinking about things which I don't control. What I control is how I do, right? If I'm giving in my best and if I'm doing my best, I think that's all I can do. If I start thinking about and having sleepless nights and saying, hey, by the way, that guy became a manager and I did not become a manager and he did something else, right? I feel it's just a sheer waste of time. The only thing that one should think about, right? And I used to fret about it. Did I get the job? Did I get the right level? And thankfully enough, as I said, I was lucky enough to get the right level, get the right job. But that's not the point. The key point is you just need to compete with yourself. Don't compete with the world, right? Even if you're the smartest, you look back or you look forward, there'll be somebody smarter than you, right? So this is not a race with people. This is a race with yourself, right? So every day, if you get up and say, I'm going to be better than what I was yesterday, that's all you need to do. You do not need to check, whose salary, he's getting 5,000 rupees more, he's getting a car and I have not got a car. That's irrelevant, right? That's completely irrelevant. Yeah, maybe it's a way you put your goals in your life, right? To say, hey, I probably in another 10 years, I want to do ABC. But that's your goal setting in which you are the only one who's competent enough to achieve it. You're the only one who's going to work towards achieving it. You cannot be thinking about who the other person does or what the other person does. And he was faster in his promotion. I was not so fast. There are many, 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 many rationales and reasons and context to which things happen. End of the day, if you just improve what you do, I think that's good enough. And that's probably what's going to stay with your life. So those are the 7 quick ones I felt always helped me in my career at different points in time. As I said, I'll talk a little bit about finance and the way I look at different careers in finance. And this is just a snapshot, not necessarily this is the only way to look at it. There are many ways to look at careers, right? Careers, I've known of people starting in a different function within the company and coming into finance and doing brilliantly well. I've seen people in finance, moving into other career choices, right? People have gone from finance to sales. People have gone from finance to marketing. People have gone from finance to supply chain management, and vice versa, right? So it's not necessarily that's how you build a career, right? I think some of the things that you always need to be sure of, what you're passionate about. Some of the other parts, the 7 ideas that I had shared, I think work also very, very well. But then eventually, to me, just to give you a flavor of how I look at corporate finance, and this is more in the corporate domain, there are a few verticals that we will look at. And I'm just going to talk about business unit. Business unit is largely around business partnering, right? So if suppose I'm at Ather, I have a team that supports the sales and the marketing teams to be able to come to the right decisions, to be able to support them with the right strategic thoughts, to be able to help them with all the commercials, to look at it, help them understand what the P&L will look at. It could even go from early days in our career to say, hey, I'm looking at how much is the budget allocated and how much am I tracking to that, right? That itself is also an important job that people in finance do. And it's not just because it's just controlling somebody's spends, but more importantly, you get to know how to prioritize spends, right? So if you know that there is only a finite set of resources, you only have 100 rupees, but there'll always be an urge and eagerness to spend 120, right? And then how do you help the teams prioritize what's the best spend pattern? How do you get the best return on your investment? I think that's a kind of work that goes around in this space. Treasury is all about the money. One thing actually somebody told me. This gentleman, and I was in conversation with him, a fairly elderly, extremely sharp and smart gentleman who was in very senior positions in Tata. He said, if in finance you have to look at one thing and one thing only, just look at your cash flows, right? He said, in my life, I've not looked at a P&L, I've not looked at a balance sheet, I've just looked at the cash flow, right? And if your cash flows are good, everything else will be taken care of, right? Which is I think it was an important lesson for me to say cash, people say cash is king, but yes, in a corporate function, even if you're one of the most profitable companies, and I've worked in Apple as well, which is one of the most profitable companies in the world, cash is still something that has a laser focus, right? And treasury deals a lot into that, is how you optimize cash, how you ensure that you mitigate risks into your cash systems. How do you plan your cash flows? How do you ensure that there are better yields? I think even something as simple as checking what goes into your bank payment on a regular basis, right? Checking that you have your right, as an example, vendor master or lists, and the amounts that have been put in is accurate. Because one error, and we've heard some of the stories that a couple of zeros got added into a bank transaction. That couple of zeros could wipe off the entire company, right? Those could be disasters you don't want to make. So even the guy who's doing a validation of a bank statement and a bank entry has probably got a significant impact of how he can work well or not well for the future of the company, right? So treasury is a very critical role. Controllership is all about how you look at accounting, how you look at taxations, how you look at how you report your financials so that there is consistency. It is as per the policies. It is how actually companies get compared, right? It's one is the culture of the company, the other is the financials of the company. And if you don't have financials that are comparable, then you really don't know how to really value a company. And therefore, it's a very important part that the controllership's function does, is to ensure that the balance sheet, the P&L, the statements, the notes, etc., are very well reported, understood, are clear, and it probably helps you be in the right path when an analyst or an external world looks at it, right? Internal audit is, and this is a funny one though, and my first job in EY was an internal audit. Quite often people say internal auditor is a person who's there to find faults. I think I beg to differ. Internal auditor is a person who helps to find efficiency in the company, right? He just tells you how to make a process more efficient. He tells you if you don't have controls, there's a possibility of things going wrong. And if things go wrong, the cost that you will bear at that time will be very high, right? So I think not just because I have a bias towards internal audit, because that's where I started my life, but it's also to the fact that how it can potentially impact the company. And internal audit is more like an early warning signal to ensure nothing goes wrong. Mergers and acquisition strategies also part and parcel of what people in finance do. As you look into, as I said, when Gillette was being acquired by Procter, I believe there was a bunch of finance guys who were looking at that transaction to arrive at that 57 billion number as the cost of the transaction, right? So, and then there's a group of people who look at long-term strategy of where you want the company to head. And these are some of the roles that people do in finance. That's a little bit of what I had to share. I'll just pause here and open it up for questions, comments. Happy to answer. I'll stop sharing. I hope I was audible and didn't finish out the entire conversation with nobody hearing.
So there is a question, sir. However, I'm sure that the entire session was very, very insightful and very knowledgeable for all our participants here. Soma asked about experiences shared in form of storytelling was really wonderful. So do you see great changes in working operations in accounting and finance areas? Share some of them, whether it's due to accounting standards, technology, or metrics. Would you like to highlight
I
on?
think the way I look at it is it's a mixed bag, right? When you look at a small company, some of them still prefer, doing their accounts in Tally. And then as the company evolves and you get into ERPs, right? When I was working in First Advantage, right? And I was taking care of two sections of First Advantage. One was a BPO based out of Bangalore, and the other one was the India commercial business based out of Mumbai, right? And I would spend 1 week in Bangalore and 1 week in Mumbai. Crazy life, but the fact remains is the BPO business was such, and the structure of the business was such that there were about 80 vendors, and that was the cost. And there was salary payout. That was the second part of the activity from a transaction standpoint. And third was just the revenue, because it was a captive BPO. You had work that you would do only for other First Advantage entities outside India. We didn't need a complex ERP, so we were happy using Tally, right? We didn't have any revenue streams, etc., to be managing the complexities. But the other side of my business, which was generating revenue, and we had 700 to 800 different clients. We had, about 50,000 validations that we would do every month, right? For that, the complexity, and we had almost 2,000 people in that, right? We had an ERP. We would work Oracle Financials, right? So I think the way I look at it is there is no standard that fits it, right? It is still very contextual. What is the size of the company? What is the kind of work that gets done in the company? What do you need the financial systems for, right? And what's the job it does for you? That is most critical, the way I look at it. And therefore, it has to be very contextual. There can't be one straight answer.
Sure, sir. Thank you so much. There's another question by Hari, where he's asked for some more information about Either Energy and their market size in EV market.
Okay. So Either Energy is a two-wheeler startup. I don't know whether sometimes I wonder whether I can call it a startup anymore. It was in 2013 when it came into being, right out of a campus in IIT Madras, where our co-founders Tarun and Swapnil wanted to make an impact into the energy space, and started off with building battery packs, only to realize that they were not great two-wheelers to put those battery packs in. So they said, okay, we'll make two-wheelers, right? And that's where they embarked on a journey, spent 5 years in research in building the Ather vehicle that you may have seen, or if not, then I would urge you to go have a look into a showroom that must be around the corner into your city. But what it did is, in India, nobody has ever tried to build a product in the nature in which, and then I'm talking about a two-wheeler. So while some people talk about, Hero or Bajaj or Kawasaki, Bajaj or TVS being great companies, and they're phenomenal companies, right? They're humongous companies. They've got phenomenal might of distribution, the way they manage operations, the way they manage the entire length and breadth, and not just in India, exports as well, right? But a lot of them built their organizations and their companies on technologies that were supported by a Honda, by a Kawasaki, by a Suzuki, right? So it's not that they built a product grounds up. And I think that was a big differentiator, where in India, Ather was building a product grounds up. When it came into the market, there were many firsts that were happening, right? First connected vehicle, first with a 7-inch dashboard a touchscreen dashboard on the screen, right? The first with the smarts that's available, right? The first in the public fast charging network structure, the first in the experience center. If you go and look at the experience center of Ather, it's unlike other automotive two-wheeler sales showrooms that you've seen earlier, right? Right in the middle of the showroom, you have a naked Ather vehicle with a battery pack submerged in water to tell that, hey, by the way, if it's an electric vehicle and if you take it into water, it's not gonna, blow up on you. So I think a lot of cool stuff happened, and over the years, we already into the third generation of our vehicle. We launched something with more colors, more fun stuff on January 7th. So yeah, I mean, it's available in a city. We are out in 70 cities now, 90 locations. That's a little bit about Ather. Sorry, there was another part of the question. I probably missed that.
Can you please share some insight for freshers to face or to be prepared in your domain? No, I think, sir, you have answered that question. So that was completely
Okay.
answered. Now, there's
Okay,
this another question by Madhuri with, where she asked that, with a lot of news on layoffs globally, can you please share some insights for freshers to face or be prepared for the market in the finance domain?
First and foremost, I think if you're right in some of the attitudes that I shared with you, I think that's in my way, because I've gone through situations where, so when we were going through the acquisition of Gillette and Procter, as I mentioned to you, right, in that there were people who were asked to move on, right? The good part was Gillette had created a career fair, got most of them placed, all of that happened, good stuff. But yes, you do, right? I think what's important is if you're always upgrading yourself, right? And when I say upgrading yourself, be out of your comfort zone, challenge yourself, learn new things, be a part of the team players. I think you will always find yourself valuable, right? In the same company, maybe not in the same company. If you're valuable, somebody will hire you. You will always have an opportunity to learn for skills on the job, right? Every time I took a job, and just a flavor of it, right? In Gillette and Procter & Gamble combined, I had about 10 years, and I did not do a particular job for more than a year and a half, right? I kept pushing my managers to say, hey, I've done this, I've learned this, I've contributed to the company in this, what's my next job, right? And so on and so forth. So I did about 5 or 6 different types of jobs within finance, right? As I moved through my career in Gillette, right? And I just share this not out of anything else, but just to share with you my experience of saying how I tried to just be more relevant. When I was in Apple, I spent 5 years with them as the CFO, and I joined First Advantage, and there were a bunch of people who came to me and saying, "You left Apple for First Advantage. Nobody knows First Advantage. Everybody knows Apple, right? And you were the CFO there, and you had quite a few doors open for you. Why did you choose First Advantage?" And my answer was, and still is, it was a brilliant decision, because in Gillette and Procter, I had done manufacturing, I had done sales, and I'm talking about sales, finance, manufacturing, finance, and so on and so forth, right? Done internal planning, I'd done forecasting. In Apple, I'd seen a trading business. In Gillette Procter, I'd seen an FMCG manufacturing kind of a business. First Advantage was into services, right? Into a BPO world as well, right? I'd never seen that. I'd never known how that works. How does the software company work? There was phenomenal learning for me, right? Today, when I'm sitting at Ather, we're a company that does manufacturing, that has a retail space, which Apple had, that has research, which we have software products because it's a connected vehicle, right? There's so much more that I'm just leveraging out of the learnings I had of the past, right? And at that point in time, had I just, and Apple was such a world that had I said I want to keep being the CFO for a few more years, it was okay. Had I said I want to continue to take up another job, the job would have been in Europe. It would have been a financial planning and consolidation job, which I'd done when I was in Gillette. There would be no learning for me. So fine, yes, I would have had a great brand name and I would have had a great company. And by the way, Apple's not the one laying off in the tech space. It is the other companies that are. But yes, I wouldn't have been able to upgrade myself. And to me, that was very, very critical. I don't want to be in my comfort zone. I want to keep on upgrading myself. The day I feel, and just one tip, right? So if I can use the word, I update my CV every 6 months. Not because I'm going hunting for a job every 6 months, but every 6 months I open my CV and I say, can I add 1 or 2 bullet points of things that I've done? And if there's no way I'm adding 2 fresh bullet points or 1 fresh bullet point every 6 months, it's time to leave the job, right? So I've always maintained this. Every 6 months, my CV will be updated. It'll be updated for the jobs I've done in the last 6 months. So yeah, I mean, that helps.
Absolutely. So it's very, very, insightful and, a tip that all our participants can definitely, adhere to. There's one question which is very common, amongst all our participants, wherein they're asking that what are the basic skills that are required to start a career in accounting and finance as a fresher? So you can just throw
I
some-
think first and foremost, get the basic skills of either a commerce or a class 12 where you take up some accountancy. If not, some friend, some brother, some colleague, some sister would give you some basics. And when I'm saying accountancy is just one small part of it. You go through a few of those things. So just get some basic level of education done. And then a lot of it is on the job. Choose the right company, choose the right profile, right? When you say start a job in accountancy, don't be, in fact, I remember somebody telling me very early in my career, right? When I was actually taking my train to go to Delhi from Calcutta to take up my job, to say, if for the first 6 months they make you photocopy papers and make you sit in a corner, just be blindly doing that. And the intent is not to say that, that's the job that you should pick up. But the fact is, by doing photocopying, by looking at papers, by arranging how files are kept, how filing is done, and those days everything were hard copies, right? Manual hard copies, right? You would learn a lot. And I did that for a few days. I was lucky it didn't go for a few months, but I did that for a few days, right? You just do understand, hey, by the way, who keeps the relevant papers in the company? Who keeps the right stuff in the company, right? My point remains is, if you're taking up a job in finance and accounts, it is a sea out there. Take up a job, go deeper into it, keep doing well, and keep pushing yourself to be out of the comfort zone. So there's no guru mantra that says, hey, if you want to start a career in finance, please take up as a cashier, or please start as a accounts payable executive, or please start as a record to report executive, or please start as an assistant manager in cash, order to cash, right? It does not work. You go out, look for a job that works for you. And there's so many domains in finance you can look at, but be sure that you learn in that, you contribute. Once you've learned your job and you've added the bullet points in your CV, be sure you tell the same company to say, hey, what's next for me, right? In terms of not promotion only. And quite often people mistake this, right? If I'm not being promoted, I'm not being successful. Success is by you learning the job, right? And learning different parts of the finance function, right? There's so many aspects. The day you realize that and the day you do be honest to that, the company will very easily realize that, hey, you are a guy who knows so many aspects about finance. They will take care of you, right? If not, then add in a few bullet points, go to another company, because there's another company who really wants somebody who's doing well.
Sure, sir. Yes, absolutely. There's another question by Soma Hari Prasad, where she asked that as you have dealt with cash-rich companies, so shed your experiences on how to handle such huge cash, and especially when you're answerable to investors. And what are the course you suggest in finance areas?
Okay, first and foremost, I've been fortunate to be at extreme ends of the pendulum, right? Companies like Apple, which has cash for sure, and in First Advantage, we were not as cash rich. Let me put it that way. Even in a startup like Ather, I continue to raise funds on a regular basis, right? So it's not always the case, but yes, as you have oodles of cash, if I can take that as an example, then obviously you got to first again put everything in context. What does is the company working towards optimizing the yield on cash, or is the company working towards ensuring conserving cash and not adding risk to it? And you have to first answer some of those questions, right? If it's a company that says, even if I have 2 rupees and I want to optimize the best return, then you will put into a high risk asset structure, right? And you will work towards getting great yields. There'll be high risks to it, but you're willing to do those, right? Versus if you're saying, hey, no, I want to not risk even a single penny out of my company because I'm not in a business of making money out of my free cash. I'm in the business of doing the business that I'm doing, whether it's manufacturing Apple products or whether it's manufacturing Tide detergents, right? And depend upon the call that you take, that the company takes, you will have to decide basis that, right? Some of the courses you can take, obviously, there are some professional courses you can go after. There are, I think, chartered financial analyst is what I was told is a good course that people can take. Nowadays, I think, and pardon my gray hair, not necessarily I'm very good with this, but there are lots of Coursera's programs and quite a few online programs that are there that give you snippets of knowledge, right? Not necessarily everything. So depending on what you are accosted with or what you believe you're working on, there will be online programs that will give you small snippets, right? And always remember, whatever you learn, right, will just help you open up your mind a little bit. But what you will learn on the job is actually what's going to stay. How you problem solve for what the job is. There will be no defined course that will say, hey, I have it tailor-made for the problem that you will face in the company, right? You will always have a course that will give you a broad contour of saying, okay, here's how you can look at it, right? So if you're looking into something to do with treasury management, yes, there'll be somebody that'll tell you, hey, how hedging works, right? Theoretically, they will talk about how you can make some structures into what kind of financing or structured instruments that you can go into, right, to raise capital and stuff. But literally, when you go into the details of that transaction and that conversation, that's you'll realize is typically how it works is not all in theory absolutely accurate. It may work on an Excel spreadsheet, but you still need to understand what it works in the context. So yes, some of the courses help. As I said, CFA is one of the things I've heard, and I definitely profess not to be an expert in this space. But I would say, look at the problem. There are some online courses that you can go after. But if you want to do it as a career, then obviously, once you know where you want to build your career, you got to pick some of the courses up, right? As I said, there are people who were not in finance. So my first manager in Gillette, right, was, I think, a chemical engineer and did a MBA in finance, right? So completely different topics. But he did that. He did an MBA for a year or so in finance and was by his graduation a chemical engineer, right? So it's just how you apply yourself, right? So there's not necessarily one course, but it just helps you probably open up your mind if you know exactly what you're looking at.
Absolutely, sir. Yeah. There's another question by Yash. However, you kind of have answered, to his question, but still I would like to put this across. He asked that how can he improve on his accounting abilities in order to, get a job, or if he would want to, work with any of the MNCs in that case.
Accounting, maths, some of those things are very similar to me, right? You got to keep practicing it, right? And accounting is as simple as that. You keep open up, I now forget the name. There were those couple of books that we would do in CA, right? They were those thick ones and had probably 2,000 problems that you would solve. And you would probably solve them multiple times, right? Theoretically, that's something that you should do, right? It just, to me, it had helped in my early stages in my career. That even if you become a CA, sometimes it's just good to go back to those books and open it up and refresh yourself, right? In fact, till today, if suppose there are some accounting issues come, I would take a piece of paper, make a T form, and do a debit and a credit, and just to be sure I understand how the accounts works, right? But that's because that's how my mind was tuned. But the mind was tuned because kept practicing those problems in the theoretical manner, right? On the job, obviously, as I said, just don't stick to, suppose you were told to fill up a particular transaction ledger, right, of 500 vouchers into the system, right? Try and just not restrict yourself to that. Go talk to your colleague. Achha, ye bharta hu to kya hota hai? इसकी अकाउंटिंग एंट्री कहाँ जाती है, राइट? ये टैली में यहाँ चला गया, उसका क्या होने वाला है, राइट? काइंड ऑफ अ स्टफ, राइट? जस्ट डोंट रिस्ट्रिक्ट योरसेल्फ टू से ओके मेरे को 500 वाउचर भरने थे, भर दिया, अब मैं तो घर जा रहा हूँ, right? There should that be that sense of inquisitiveness, and that's how you will know that, hey, by the way, मैंने अकाउंटिंग में पढ़ा था, अगर ये एक्सपेंस वाउचर का यहाँ पे डेबिट जा रहा है तो उसका करस्पॉन्डिंग एंट्री कहाँ जाता है, वो बंदा वहाँ पे ऑफिस में बैठा हुआ है, he will know, right? Let me speak to him, what's it impacting him, right? Or the guy who's consolidating the accounts, sit with him to say, you gave me this 400 vouchers to punch into the Excel spreadsheet or the Tally system or the ERP system. Where does it go, right? So be inquisitive and please work hard in probably, taking care of those books. It's just sometimes it's fun. If you like the subject, you'll enjoy solving those problems.
Absolutely, sir. Sure. There's another question by Charul where she says that, what's your thought on AI in fintech as a CFO? Also, enlighten me with more on responsibilities of a CFO.
Okay. And I'll probably take one last question after this, so I'll have to jump out at 6. But AI as a CFO, I think technology is a great tool. And, a few years back, Tally was a great tool. A few years after that, an ERP became a great tool. A few years after that, blockchain came in, and then now machine learning and AI. I think, and there was this point in time where people said that, when you had ERP coming in, they said all finance jobs will be lost, right? And no, actually, you still have a lot of finance people getting hired for new stuff, right? The way I believe, as businesses grow, as businesses become transnational, as the businesses become extremely complex, you do need technology support, right? At different stages of evolution of commerce, if I can use the word, people have come out with tools to support the businesses, right? And AI is another tool to support the business. It is not how the business will be run, right? SAP is a company that provides ERP solutions for various companies. But a company like Aether will not be driven by SAP. Aether will drive SAP, how it's being used as a tool, right? So that's something that's very, very important we need to bear in mind. So AI is just another tool and what it does for you, right? And therefore, it needs to be relevant to what I do, right? If there is a solution that comes across that says, hey, it helps me improve the efficiency or the accuracy or the speed in which I am able to post an entry, or if I'm able to engage with my vendor or my customer, or I'm able to reconcile better, or how I connect with my banking systems, for sure, why wouldn't I go ahead and look at that as an option, right? If it just helps me free up my bandwidth from my team, who's probably punching in, tomorrow has a better way of getting that same transaction through in a far more accurate manner, then yes, I will take that as an option. Now, what does an AI tool do? I think it'll be dependent on what people who work on those various tools, bring it together in context to what you need to do. So yeah, that's how I look at AI. I think technology in general, right? I have had many opportunities to adopt technologies for whatever we do at different stages, but it always has to be in context of what it's solving for, right? Just because there's a good AI tool, I will just not pick it up. I will pick it up if I know for sure it's going to solve for something that I'm wanting to become more efficient or more accurate.
Sure, sir. Thank you. There's one more question, and that's very interesting, and that's why I'm just putting it across here. Like, what are some common financial mistakes that you've seen companies make, considering that you have got so many years of experience with so many companies? So if you can just highlight on that as well. Keep
your eyes away from cash. Right. I think that's a big mistake people make sometimes. As I said, and not just me, actually, somebody, as I said, that senior person who was a director in Tata Sons said that cash flow, right? I think that's most important. You've got to keep an eye on the cash, right? If you lose a heartbeat there, you're in deep trouble. I think that's the first. The second financial mistake people can make is actually not having financials in sync with the company objectives, right? Quite often, I've seen situations where somebody makes a P&L and balance sheet and saying, here's where the next year is going to be like. Hey, but you didn't talk to the business, you didn't talk to the product teams, you didn't talk to what innovation is going to come through, whether they will be able to deliver. You said you will spend 20 crores in marketing, right? Hey, but no, I may have a product launch and it may make sense for me to spend 25 crores, because with 20 crores, I may be able to do a crappy job and only get 100 crores of revenue. But if I spend that 5 crores more, and I'm just making up numbers, not necessarily that's how it works, but I may have been able to give you 130 crores of revenue. Right? So you should not work in isolation as a finance guy, right? You have to be in context of business. In some companies, finance does take a large role and drives quite a few things. Nothing wrong with that. But it always has to be in context of where the company's headed, where the company objectives are. So if you lose your heartbeat on that, I think that can be in trouble. And there are many finance mistakes people make, right? I think trying to be, we are in finance, if you look at it as chartered accountants, right? What they teach you to find mistakes, because you say, okay, you're auditing to find mistakes, right? Your mind is tuned to always finding mistakes rather than finding opportunities, right? That's a big difference. But you're trained to say, I'm auditing something that you've already done, to say, okay, did you do it right? Right? I think there are some of those subtle mistakes people make to say, hey, I'm just an auditor. I will control. I will tell you so much is the budget. No, but just think a little bit broader, think a little bit bigger, right? If you don't think, you are going to make mistakes and you shouldn't do that.
Sure, sir. Thank you so much. You have patiently answered to all the questions that was raised by our participants. And I'm sure everyone enjoyed the session with such an amazing, presentation that you had. It was a really informative session for all our, participants here and for all of us here present. Thank you so much, sir. Mamta, over to you.
Sure, thanks. Well, sir, our audience definitely does have so many more questions, but it's not every day that we get to directly ask questions to a CFO, right? So they are taking the maximum advantage of this opportunity. But in the interest of time, it would be great if, we can email these questions to you, and whenever you do have the time, if you can possibly, reply to them, that would be great.
No, and thank you for having me around. It was a great session. I liked quite a few of the questions that came through. And thank you for this opportunity to get to speak to everybody. It's just my honor.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. The pleasure was all ours. Thank you so much. You can now exit the webinar. We'll continue with the next session.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Have a great day.